Hello, and welcome to the program presentation of Flying Start to Literacy Phonics Stage 2 by Okapi Educational Publishing. In Stage 2, we're going to look at double letters, adjacent sounds, longer vowels, reading longer multisyllabic words and compound words, and morphology. In this resource, you'll have a teacher resource book, which will give you the lessons, the assessments, any other ancillary resources for students to practice. And we will also have a set of decodable texts. Let's jump into the teacher resource book now. Flying Start to Literacy Phonics Stage 2's resource book will have all of your lessons. It also always starts with a little professional development for the teacher to learn key terms and understand just how to go about the teaching of these modules and units, which we'll take a look at in just a moment. There is a review of the assessments that they'll take for placement. We'll go into that in more in depth. And there is an overview of the lessons. So when we look at a lesson, we want to understand that it comes in 4 blocks. Each one of these columns, oral language development, phonological awareness, phonics, and high utility words, represents a block. Oral language development is block 1, phonological awareness is block 2, phonics is block 3, high utility words is block 4. Let's take a look at how that is laid out in the terms of time management. So block 1, the oral language piece, is prescribed 30 minutes a day. Block 2, phonological awareness and phonics, is 30 minutes a day. Block 3, phonics and writing, is 30 minutes a day. And block 4, the high utility word, high frequency words and consolidate learning, is also for 30 minutes a day. And here's a weekly timetable sample. In essence, each unit that we're going to look at is a week long. Moving into the scope and sequence, you'll be able to see all of the double letters, adjacent sounds, morphology, compound words in its entirety. But really what you want to focus on here is that there are 2 modules. So here's one module on the left page and another module on the right page. Each module consists of 10 units or 10 weeks of instruction each. So you would have 10 here, making up a total of 20 weeks of instruction for Flying Start to Literacy Phonics Stage 2. Moving into the assessments, you have the student sheets where they'll read words for placement, and then writing words for placement, writing high utility words for placement, and then finally moving into the teacher record where they're checking for accuracy for their responses to make sure they're in the right placement on this supplemental resource. And then we move into the first module. So module 1, again, consisting of 10 lessons or 10 units. And you can see that each of these units is very explicit for the teacher to go through a lesson. But we'll always start with oral language development, or say it. You have the goal or the TEKS right here underneath, and then you move into the lesson. And the lesson is always going to have a poem in the oral language, and then we'll move to a vocabulary piece, and then a spiral review of a skill that has been taught in the past. That would be block 1. Block 2, phonological awareness. Again, we go into the goals or the TEKS, and then we go into rhyming words, blend sounds, segment into sounds, and change a sound. This is all the listening piece to that. And in the notes down here, it has a piece for you or the teacher to differentiate instruction in case a student needs extra support within that period of time. Moving to block 3, phonics or write it. You have your TEKS, and then we're always going to move from understanding, learning, and writing the letters and the blends into writing words. So that's the progression you'll always see in phonics where they're writing. And finally, block 4 is high utility words where they're seeing it, saying it. And so these are words that may not follow the pattern in the first 3 blocks, but will help later on, especially when it comes to the decodable text that will correlate to these lessons. And then finally, consolidate learning, typically a game or an activity for the student to play or to do, just to measure progress, a formative assessment there. So that's the first unit in the first module. And then as we flip through to the second unit the next week, we'll see it's the same. It's always oral language. It's always phonological awareness. It's always phonics. It's always high utility words. There's a clear pattern for the lesson frame for all of the units in every module. And then as we get to the end of module 1, you'll see your decodable text. So there are 10 units in module 1. There are 10 decodable text in module 1 as well. And that's because these decodable texts were written specifically to correlate to the lessons and to the skills that students are learning in the module. So this helps them reinforce learning through text. After that, you'll have a short summative assessment to check for understanding. And then we move to the second module, where again, you have 10 units and every unit looks the same again. So we would go through these 10 units. And then the 10 decodable texts that correlate with module 2 and the skills that were learned. Summative review, summative assessment, and then we move into the poems. And so these poems are the poems that you saw in the oral language development portion or block for each module or each unit. And so you can find these at the back. These can be printed off. They can be placed in front of students. They can be put on the smartboard so that students can read along with the teacher as they are going through the oral language portion. You have your high utility words as well. These can be printed off, cut out for students to have in their hands. And then you have your practice sentences. The practice sentences are designed not to be done at the end of each module, but at the end of each unit, because these are ways where students can practice seeing text with the skills that they learned in them, right? So these can be printed out, these can be placed in front of students, they can be read, they can really understand and see the correlation to the skills that they've been working with in the context of print and sentences, and then the students are encouraged to write their own sentences with the skills that they learned within that unit. And so there's one of these for all of your units. And then finally, you have your word to picture cards. These again can be printed out. They can be placed in front of students so they can practice and see these. And these correspond to the units as well and the skills that they're learning. That is the teacher guide that comes along with every Flying Start to Literacy Phonics Stage 2 kit. This is available in print. It's also available in digital for teacher use. Moving on, you know that at the end of every module, there are 10 decodable text. There are a total of 20 decodable text with Stage 2. And they are going to come in print and digital. Each title will have 6 copies each. And let's jump into one now. So this is how ants make nests. And as we flip through this, you can see the visuals, you can see the words on the page. They're all written, designed specifically to reinforce a 1 to 2 skills that students have learned within the context of the units. And then finally, at the end of every decodable text with Flying Start to Literacy Phonics Stage 2, you have these teaching notes. They follow the before, during, and the after pattern. And so before the reading, there are reviews for the phonics and the skills that the students learned and the high utility words that will be inside of this text. This makes the book more accessible for students. And then we introduce the text, and then there's the during the reading portion, right? So it'll have notes in there to prompt students who might need some extra support, also listening for fluency and accuracy, expression, pace, pausing, and phrasing as they go through, as the students read these books in their small groups. And then finally, after the reading, and in the after the reading portion, these books actually have a beginning to end story typically, and so you will have comprehension questions, both literal, inferential, and evaluative, for students to answer at the end of all of their readings. And then finally, extension lessons for phonics and phonological awareness that teachers can give to students. And you can see all of the titles to the right on the right-hand page and the skills that they work with. That would be your an example of what a decodable text looks like. And finally, within the teacher resources, the teachers will have access to a website where they'll be able to print off specific pages, like the vocabulary to picture cards, or the practice sentences, anything that the students need to have extra practice or support. Those are printable, and they can find all that information here, along with the assessments and the records for the teachers, all found on the website. And so those are just an extra layer of support for the teacher as well. And that concludes the program presentation on Flying Start to Literacy Phonics, Stage 2. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.